Wow, this is Eric West coming to you live potentially from Maui, Hawaii. We're here to give you a quick update on what's happening with the fire and to give you some critical information that we think is very helpful for people that are going through this crisis at the moment. And so what we ask is if there's something in this video that you think is helpful for someone that is going through the Lahaina fire aftermath, please share the video and make this information available to them. If you're new to the channel, my name's Eric West. I've been live on the ground here for ever since this occurred. Not sure exactly what day it is. It's Thursday, August 17th. And so we're committed to bringing you the truth about this entire situation and what's going on the ground right now. This is a new format that we're using right now. We're trying to multi-stream on a number of different platforms. And I'm also in the process of being interviewed right now. I can't say by who, but I can promise you it is a very prominent political figure with Hawaii. And we're hoping that we can use their platform to spread the truth about what's happening right now here with the situation. So I'm going to be asked a number of questions. I'm just going to answer them as I'm asked, and then we'll share the information as we go along. So at this point, you want to start with your first question? Okay. Yes. Oh, okay. That's how I roll.
Okay. Let me reframe then.
So a couple of things I'm going to point out while she's adjusting is I'd like to let it be known that there's still no consistent internet or telephone communications here on the west side of Maui, despite what you might hear. They may have towers up, and I'm sure they're working on it, but at this point in time, all of my calls have been very spotty and have been dropped throughout the day. We have absolutely no 5G that worked consistently, and of course no internet at home through Spectrum. So we're still in a communications blackout, and that's one of the things I'd like to specifically ask if the government or whoever might be listening to this, if you can deploy some type of assets, whether it be Starlink or the military that's over on Oahu, to do something to open up the channels of communication between us, the citizens amongst each other, and also the powers that be, so that we can have communication. I believe communication is the essential resource, and our 501(c) we just formed is called Let's Fill the Gap. Let's find the gap, let's fill the gap. And we believe one of the biggest gaps right now is, in fact, no communication on the internet and on the cell phone. So if you're ready to go with your first question, go ahead.
Ready to go. I want you to set the scene. When I got here, you were telling me about the day and what you guys did the following day. So just to tell me your personal experience of what happened.
So my personal experience is I live in Ka'anapali, which is north of Lahaina, and I was basically working. I was at the Maui Eldorado, which is right by Ka'anapali, North Ka'anapali Beach. I came out of that at about 10:30, and I saw the most massive plume of black smoke, and I knew that that was a very serious fire. And essentially, I went home and Googled what was going on. I saw on Maui Now that they had reported that there was a brush fire in Lahaina and that it was 100% contained. So I actually let some people know that I knew personally in Lahaina Luna via text, hey, I think you're good. Well, this was a little bit earlier, I apologize. Earlier, before I went on my appointment, there was a notification of a brush fire. And then when I got home, after seeing the black cloud of smoke, I knew it was getting very, very serious. And at that point in time, we just started to observe from a distance what was going on. But I personally was not in the, in the fire. I was, the closest it got to my home was about maybe a mile or two to the south.
Got it. And then the next day?
So that evening, we chose to evacuate from our home because the fire, like I said, did get pretty close. And we had a sense that there was a major event happening in Lahaina, but of course we had no communication. The power went out the previous night at about 4 o'clock in the morning, so we had no power, we had no communication, so we really didn't know what was actually going on, other than obviously we could see the smoke and the wind. And so I actually went and got footage from my dirt bike. Didn't go into town, but just saw this unbelievable mass of smoke and wind, and it was a very, very windy day. 50, 60, 70 mile an hour winds that were nonstop and absolutely just, relentless, if you will. So the next day, that evening we evacuated. We went to my family's condo in Ka'anapali, and we got a few hours sleep. And the next morning we got up and went straight to work and see what we could do to help the community.
And then you said you and your son went. To Ground Zero, and what did you guys see?
So basically, we were one of the. I did not go to Ground Zero the very next day. I felt uncomfortable going because, it was obviously a very, massive event, and I didn't really want to go that close into that. But someone else that was staying with us that lived in Lahaina Luna was very concerned about his car and his possessions. The only reason he was able to escape is because he was sitting in his car trying to evacuate and ultimately couldn't continue going because there was a traffic jam in Lahaina Luna. So he decided to abandon his vehicle. He happened to have a motorcycle, which is parked in my garage right now, a street bike, and he was able to leave Lahaina Luna on his motorcycle. And so that saved his life, essentially. So he came to our home. The next morning, he went in on his motorcycle to get his possessions and to check on his home. And that's what gave me the courage to go back the next day. So I was down there on day 2 and was able to see firsthand the destruction.
And what did you see?
The closest I could come to explaining it would be images I've seen of Hiroshima and Nagasaki, just absolute destruction. Everything is pulverized dust, essentially. There's a few walls standing. I personally did not see any bodies or anything, and I felt the importance of the importance to memorialize it. And as a YouTuber and someone that has photographic equipment, I went in there and I meticulously videotaped every single street that I could get to with a GoPro 4K. And I also brought down my drone and I flew it over every inch of that area because I thought it would be important to capture what had happened in a very, thorough manner, the best I could do under the conditions. And there was, I would say, maybe less than 10 people on the ground that were officials. There wasn't a bunch of people there. It was like a ghost town, essentially. And every time we'd see a police officer or a firefighter, they were just like, "Hey, how's it going?" So they weren't trying to kick us out or anything. It was very somber, obviously, but we just decided to survey the situation the best we could, and had some friends that were concerned about their safe, and I went and checked on that. But ultimately, it was just like any other fire area, just smoldering smoke and heat and very bad smells and whatnot. But ultimately, it just looked like what you would expect for a town that's just been completely burned to the ground.
And then you...
Stuck poop makes thin women look fat. Can't go? Do this to clear up.
You said you didn't see a lot of officials. When did the officials start to come into town and barricade everything off?
The barricading, what I've seen is that, what I've heard and what I've seen with my own eyes is that they put a barricade around the entire Lahaina town. They put in these stakes, and I heard they're going to barbed wire the whole thing. And there's now checkpoints with National Guard. The only presence I've seen of military/National Guard would be at these, checkpoints that are around, but you're no longer allowed to access the area. For some reason, they've created a no-fly zone, even for unmanned drones, essentially. And we don't understand. I kind of understand, but it would be nice for us to be able to keep an eye and survey what is actually going on in that particular part of Lahaina, just to keep the public informed. And so we have actually put in some sort of requests through the FAA to get permission, because there are ways around those restrictions if you have reasons to watch the hillside for fires and flare-ups. We still do have a very active fire situation. As you can tell, we're hiding in the bushes right now because of the wind that's blowing. Kula fire is still burning at this moment. There's only a 60% containment. So we want to make sure we shine a light on that right now and we get people up there, and military resources and major resources beyond just Maui County Fire Department. Now that the whole world is paying attention to what's going on here, it would be nice to get that fire 100% extinguished with all the equipment that's available. The Maui County Fire Department would allow volunteers to fly over. They would open up their arms and shake hands with people that want to come and help and put that fire out, because I believe we're being distracted somewhat, intentionally or unintentionally, on the Lahaina fire, and we need to make sure that Kula fire is put out. There's a lot of environmental issues at hand right now that need to be dealt with and need to be coordinated and need to be communicated to the powers that be, with the county, with the state, with FEMA, and there's people that are on their way right now to come and help, specifically that had experience with the Paradise Fire, with the fires at Malibu. Lessons learned need to be applied from those fires to this fire incident, and those people are on their way. And I believe we need to open up the doors and the channels of communication through your platform and others to make sure that these people can communicate and do the right thing for the people of Hawaii.
So I had a question in regards to communication. You touched upon it briefly before we started filming. And the few days that we've been here, I've noticed a severe lack of communication on all levels. So can you speak to that? What have you heard from you know, your mayor or your governor? Like, what kind of communication as a citizen are you getting or not getting?
Well, here's the thing that the world doesn't seem to understand, because you look at the world through your paradigm on the mainland and you think, I've got a phone that works and I have internet connection, 5G, 3G, and I've got my Wi-Fi at my house. We've had absolutely no Wi-Fi or 5G or 3G or 4G or any G since this thing has started. Zero. The only thing that's worked consistently is the ability to receive text messages. We've been able to receive text messages on T-Mobile, who I'm with, throughout this entire affair, yet we have not received one text this entire time. So if they're trying to send messages to the citizens that are stuck in West Maui, why are they not using outgoing text messages that I've been able to receive? I can prove it empirically. That's a way of communicating. Obviously, they sent out a fake missile warning to the entire state a few years ago. They could easily send out text messages to inform the people. So we feel like there's some kind of a communication blackout. We don't know why, but I think there are methodologies that they could fix this. I believe the military, I have friends that are Marines on my HOA. I'm on the night watch with our neighborhood watch, and he's in the military. He goes, he knows they could come in here and set up communications very, very quickly. So my question is, where is the military? We have Oahu that's 100 miles away. We've got the Air Force, Marines, we got everybody basically over there, one of the biggest world installations of military. Why are they not here assisting us? Why are they not over here? Why do we just have a few National Guardsmen that are sitting under a tent, just watching a checkpoint? I don't see FEMA, I don't see Red Cross at any of the distribution centers. So all the sound bites that you're hearing, the pieces I've picked up since I've had my Starlink going, they're not true. And I actually heard the FEMA administrator say, oh, there's cell phone coverage there's towers up, and I got connection, and that might be true on the other side of the island, but do yourself a favor, grab a map of Maui, and look where Lahaina is, and look where Kahului is. They're on two opposite sides of the island, and over here, there are no shelters. There's people that have been put up in condominiums, but they're not in shelters. There are no shelters here, and there is absolutely no communication happening on the west side of Maui right now with cell phones.
And what is today?
Today is Thursday, August 17th at 4 p.m.
So 8 days after the fires come through, and you still have heard no official communication from any.
They were using, from what I gathered.
Can you repeat my question?
Yeah. So there's that. The question is, has there been any official communication? I know they've been posting things now on online, which we can't see. They had AM and FM broadcasts at 9, 12, and 3. But again, most people don't have radios anymore. I mean, do you have a radio? I don't. And then the cars, they were not allowing us to go and get supplies and bring them back, so people were not running their cars. I know cars have radios, but it's hard to even know that it's on the radio. I only learned that because I tried to leave the island. I went to Kakaloa the morning of to get supplies and to bring back gasoline, to bring back what I could, and there was a checkpoint there already on the other side saying I couldn't come back. So I talked to the police officers at the checkpoint. I said, hey, I'm going to Costco and get some stuff. Can I get back in? And they said, no, if you leave here, you cannot get back in. So I turned around and I came right back. And that's a very, very treacherous road. You have no idea what I went through because there was a mass exodus, and now I had to fight all that traffic. It's a one-lane road. You cannot have two cars pass, and there's cliffs, sheer cliffs that go down. And they forced people and residents to take that road into West Maui until just the day before yesterday. So they have been trying to shut us off from coming and going and bringing in supplies. So thankfully, the private citizens, wrangled boats to bring them around to Black Rock and Kaanapali, and they did what they could to get people over here. And then the one day they told us we could go to the other side of the island from 6 a.m. to 10 p.m. They allowed everyone to leave, and then they got their supplies and they turned around and they wouldn't let them back in. So it's just unbelievable how difficult they are trying to make it for us to survive. But thankfully, the spirit of aloha is alive. The community takes care of itself. The Hawaiian people take care of each other. And these communities are coming together and making it happen. But it's certainly, despite what the government is doing.
And can you talk about what a day is? You said you're on night watch. Can you kind of explain what that is?
Well, there's been rumors, I would say, of looting. We have not personally seen any looting in our communities, but we have heard of it through the grapevine, through the coconut wireless, as they say. And I think a lot of these things started with some kind of story about someone being held at gunpoint for some supplies. So when that came out, then obviously we thought, hey, we better be careful and just make sure that our neighborhoods are safe so our kapuna can sleep at rest at night and that everyone can feel good. So in our neighborhood, we have a shift from 10 to 12, 12 to 2, 2 to 4, 4 to 6. Volunteers, 4 men that go out and patrol the neighborhood and check all the cars that are coming in just to make sure. I've sat that, my sons have sat that, all 3 of them, and there has been no incidences, but the one incident or the multiple incidences that we did have is there's a field next to our neighborhood here in Kaanapali, in between Kaanapali and Coffee Farms, that has had a 3-acre brush fire the day after the Lahaina fire, and then that reignited 3 different times, and we as the neighborhood watch called in that to 911 and had them come back and put it out. So one of the biggest questions I have for the officials on this whole thing is, why is it that fire that sparked here and is 100% contained, and or the fire that started in Lahaina that was announced as 100% contained, why wouldn't they be watching those fields very closely with hoses at the ready? Why would they leave a field and then take a chance when you have high winds that could instantly re-spark? And I'm not saying they didn't have fire trucks there, but it appears as if they didn't. And they certainly did not have fire trucks on our field here. We saw the fire reignite and had to call them. But and I know that the resources are stretched and there's a fire in Kula, but it just seems like there's some diligence or being very thorough about making sure a fire has more roots. The way fires work in Hawaii many times is these roots are underground and there's still embers and they can reignite. And that's one of the things I want to bring the focus back to the Kula fire, that we need to make sure that the water is tainted, they can't do their dishes, they can't take showers, the water quality has already gone to the point where they're not feeling comfortable, but they're being told by firemen and fire officials that there's just not enough people to help fight this fire. Sorry, we're doing all we can. But I feel like that's a really weird excuse considering the whole world is watching Maui right now, and there's a fire that's burning. We should have so many resources on that thing helping from Oahu. Again, Oahu is a short 15-minute flight. I'm sure they could get some aircraft or some helicopters over there to help put out that fire. And maybe they are, I don't know, but the residents that are calling and telling me say that they don't see enough fire support up there.
In regards to the night of the incident, did any communication go out at all? Was there any kind of warning, like?
I have personally no warning whatsoever, but I've also interviewed many families. Our GoFundMe is Lahaina Fire Fund, and part of it is interviewing families and having them tell their story. And then if you give to that, you can name that family, and then you can basically give directly. And so in those interviews, I've always asked them, did you hear any sirens? Was there any warnings? No. The answer has always been a resounding no. They found out from the fire from maybe somebody else, or they smelled smoke. Some people had that discernment and could tell. Other people, I heard there was people in the sly mongoose, and they were still partying and doing shots, and they warned them, hey guys, you got to go. And I don't know if they left or not, but it was just word of mouth spreading by people trying to help each other. But there was no official sirens. There was no police or firemen trying to evacuate people. I have not heard any reports of that.
I'm going to circle back to what we initially were talking about in regards to, the people who have survived and have lost everything. There's a massive concern about a land grab happening. And I know that if you could just say what it is that you do for a living and just kind of your knowledge of any kind of feedback or support or resources that you could alert them of, that would be wonderful.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I am a real estate agent by profession for the last 13 years here on Maui, and prior farm and ranch broker in Colorado. I don't have a ton of experience with a bunch of fire damage, but I've gotten a quick study from some individuals that are actually coming over here with Operation Recovery Maui that helped with, and that's Buzzy Kerbox's family, who they have. They buried their mom and dad in Lahaina. They own property on Front Street, and they advocated for people in Malibu. So they gave me a quick 2-hour download of everything that I could share with you that's important to know in terms of the supposed land grab. And what they informed me of is that the biggest concern is actually the insurance companies. Not that they're bad guys, but you got to be careful. You got to cross your T's, dot your I's. And a few things that they wanted me to share with you is, number one, be sure to ask for a full copy of your insurance policy. Most people just have a deck page. They don't have all the information, but make sure you get the entire policy. Don't sign anything at this point in time. You can ask for an advance. They're supposed to advance you money. That's ahead of any kind of settlement or agreement. They need to provide, usually there's an acronym for it, but temporary housing that they pay for, and you can start that process right away, and they encourage people to start the process right away, get on it. But ultimately, there should not be any kind of quote-unquote land grab, because all these properties are individually owned. These are fee simple properties with one owner or an entity or shared ownership per parcel, and each one of those will have their own insurance policy that basically drives what's the replacement value of the structure, and then that monies will come back to them. I've heard that Joe Biden has opened up the full max value because it's in this type of a disaster zone, so you should get the max payout that your insurance policy allows, at which point you'll have the decision to either rebuild, take that money and rebuild. FEMA will provide low interest loans if you need some extra money to rebuild your home, or you could choose to take the money and then sell your lot, and you have the right to sell your lot, and then the market forces of supply and demand will ultimately determine what that land is worth. And it's just like any other real estate market that we have in our country. So, but the immediate steps to take are to get consultation from an attorney, such as this free service that is coming over with Operation Rescue Maui. And then be sure to call FEMA right away. There's an 800 number. One of my clients owned an apartment building in Lahaina that burned to the ground, and he has all of his tenants have already called FEMA. They've given them a detailed list of the possessions that they lost and what they're worth, and they have immediate monies going into their checking account like right away. So the purse book is open for the victims of this fire to call FEMA. There's an 800 number. I don't have it handy. I've got it somewhere, but call them right now and get your claim started. You have to give them your name, your social security number, and your address, and answer some questions, and be ready for a detailed accounting of all your possessions, and they will reimburse you. And my client told me that's already happening. He's already got his insurance claim started. He already has an architect. They will open up the path for permits to be issued, expedited. So he made it sound like his experience, this gentleman rebuilt more homes in Paradise than any other builder. So he's lived it, and he's seen the financial benefit essentially that community received from all of these insurance and FEMA payouts. So there's a lot of benefits that I believe are coming to the people of Lahaina that lost, and we should dispel the fear mongering of the land grab. I just don't believe it's a real fear, unless there's a threat that I'm not aware of, but I'm not a big conspiracy theory guy. But I believe this will be business as usual in terms of recouping losses from a major forest fire. And then the town has an opportunity to rebuild itself, and I believe that does require the commercial section should be coordinated, so we somehow keep the historic feel of Lahaina Town, and that's an important rebuild, and I think that needs to be done with a commission of local people that have a voice, the Hawaiian people. It's not run by some Black Rock or whoever, Black whatever. It should be the people that have a voice in how they rebuild their town.
And then can you just say what the organization is and how they'll be able to get a hold of them and when they're planning on arriving?
My understanding is Buzzy Kerbox's brother Bill is on his way with his attorney that helped all these people in Malibu. I believe they'll be here next week. I believe it's Operation Recovery Maui or Maui, is that it? And they are a 501(c) that's registered here in the state of Hawaii. As a matter of fact, our 501(c) is currently tucked inside of theirs until all our paperwork goes through. And ours is, of course, LFG, hashtag LFG, let's fill the gap. And so we're associated with them loosely right now because we want to bring legitimacy to what we're doing and putting all the monies into the hands of the people and providing information that will protect them ultimately and help them make right decisions.
That's wonderful. And is there anything else that you wanted to talk about that I haven't asked you?
Yeah, a couple things. Buzzy Kerbox's brother Bill has an association with a company that's involved in global, has a global reach, if you will, into helping post, not tragedies, this is a tragedy, but post remediation, if you will, of things like massive wildfire, of polluting the soil. There's a lot of toxic waste that's in this area, and if we're not waiting on the county of Maui to do this, but we need to put the right people in touch with the right people that know how to do this professionally, are doing it currently in other sites around the globe. And I've got the personal cell phone number of this gentleman. I'm not going to mention it here. And I can't remember the name of the company. I have it written down. But Buzz and his brother Bill are involved with this particular company that can help bring in the Army Corps of Engineers and start creating the right drainage right now in Lahaina. So I want you to imagine in a week or 2 or 3 or 4 there's a massive rain that comes, right? And Lahaina town does not it gets 12 inches of rain a year maybe. So if that did occur, we need to plan ahead for some kind of drainage so that all that waste and all that horrible stuff does not go into our oceans, and then we have an environmental disaster, right? Or they could use that as an excuse, whoever they are, to say, oh, this is a toxic site and you can no longer, it's not habitable, and then it's just a nightmare. So my question is what steps are being taken right now today to align the right people to redirect all this waste and to make sure it doesn't go into our oceans, doesn't go into our water supply, to remediate the soil, and are the right people being put in place to make that happen? Is somebody thinking about that? Like, is somebody thinking about the cool of fire? Is somebody thinking about our oceans? I know Hawaii is full of all kinds of people that love the ocean, and that love the ocean, love our environment, so that needs to be put on the forefront. There's so many things to be thinking about here concurrently, but the good news is we have resources. We have the attention of the world at the moment. We have people from California, we have people from all over the world that love to come to Maui on vacation. Now is their opportunity to return the aloha that they experienced here over the many generations, and to bring the smartest minds, to bring the smartest people with the best resources. But we need to have a handshake with the government, with FEMA, with the federal, with the county, with the state. They need to be open to these communications, and they need to be transparent in everything that's going on, and create an information flow that makes sure that this is happening, and it's happening correctly, and we don't have a tragedy that follows a tragedy, essentially. We want to make sure that's the last tragedy, and we're thinking and we're putting in things in place right now to make sure there's not another tragedy that happens down the road.
And is there anything you want to express to the mainlanders, as you say, that we're not understanding, or that you just want us to have a better idea?
I would say the number one thing that you may be not understanding, but we've already pointed it out, that we are in a communication blackout. Don't believe the sound bites that Verizon's got this, or AT&T. Can you hear me now? We can't hear you now. Okay, we can't hear anything. The calls are dropping. The text messages come one direction. Where were the text messages during the emergency and during the last week? We didn't have any incoming, but we do get incoming text messages. There is a communications massive gap right now with the people on West Maui. And I believe it's important to give us access, to give the press access, to give people access to see what's going on behind the barbed wire fence, and to see what they are doing, and to have an open communication with the remediation of the soil, to protect our ocean, and ultimately the big one, in my opinion, is to protect the people, and to give them the right information, to put down the fear, and also to make sure that they know what the next steps are, not just to be safe and sound and healthy, but to get monies repaid. And so a flow of communication is what is needed, so that they know what the next steps are. And right now, people over here just don't have any communication. And so that's my number one thing is, and then also share this video, share this platform that you're seeing this on, share it, because there is suppression that is happening at some level. So if you know somebody that's a big influencer, a Jake Paul, a Joe Rogan, someone that's in with the people, that can share this information and can get it out in the airways and just blow up the internet, and make sure that this information goes out so the algorithm can't suppress the people that are trying to share the truth of what's happening on Maui.
Appreciate it. Appreciate your time. And one last follow-up is just in regards to FEMA. Some people have a concern if they sign with FEMA that they're signing away some kind of rights. Can you just talk about what it is that you're signing when you do sign with FEMA?
I mean, I don't completely understand. I don't think I'm qualified to answer the question, but I have spoken to other people that dealt with FEMA and other other wildfire tragedies, and from the reports are that they're a generous organization that gives to victims, and so I don't think they have necessarily anything to do with the property rights. But again, I'm not an expert, but I know if you lost possessions, if you rent a property on Maui and you lost your possessions, call the 800 number today and get your claim started, and they'll put money in your checking account really quick, is what I've been told. If you're a landowner, I think there is some monies that you can get from FEMA for your personal possessions. I don't know that for a fact, but I personally wouldn't be afraid of FEMA. I think right now they're here to help. The checkbook is open, is what I've been told, and you talk to these nice ladies down in Alabama or wherever, and they'll take care of you, is what I've been told. So I don't think there's anything to fear with FEMA. I do question the big supposed, you know, Red Cross and Salvation Army and these big United Ways. I've heard from the victims of Paradise Fire that they were collecting all this money through these big organizations, and later on, instead of giving it to the victims, they put up park benches. So to me, it's that kind of stuff that is obnoxious.